You have been performing your life instead of living it. Every post, every room you walked into needing to be noticed, every conversation you steered back to yourself, every achievement you announced before it was finished. You have been spending your energy on being seen and wondering why you feel empty. Here is the truth no one around you is brave enough to say. Attention is a drug, and you are addicted. It feels like connection. It feels like validation. It feels like proof that you matter. But it is costing you the one thing that would actually change your life. Your power. This book is about getting it back. Chapter 1. Attention is the trap. Power is the goal. Let's start with the truth you have been avoiding. You are addicted to being seen, not in a dramatic way, not in a way that is obvious to the people around you, in the quiet, daily, compulsive way that has become so normal you stop noticing it. The way you check how many people viewed your story before you have finished your morning coffee. The way you reshape what you were about to say the moment you realize someone important is listening. The way you feel a specific kind of deflation, small, sharp, difficult to name, when you share something and the room does not respond the way you needed it to. That deflation is information. Pay attention to it, because what it is telling you is that somewhere along the way, without a conscious decision, without a moment you can point to, you handed the controls of your self-worth to an audience. And now you are flying blind, depending on their reaction to know whether you are on course. That is not freedom. That is not confidence. That is not power. That is a trap, and you have been living inside it. Before we go further, let's define the two things this entire book is built on, because most people use these words interchangeably, and that confusion is costing them everything. Attention is external. It is borrowed. It is given by other people, and it can be withdrawn by other people without explanation, without warning, and without any regard for what you have done to earn it. Attention is the reaction of an audience. And like all audiences, it is fickle, distracted, and always looking for the next thing. Power is internal. It is built. It accumulates through discipline, through consistency, through the private decisions you make when no one is watching and nothing is being recorded. Power does not require an audience. Power does not diminish when the room stops paying attention. Power is the thing that remains when the applause stops. And it remains because it was never dependent on the applause in the first place. Here is the line. Lock it in. Write it down if you have to. Attention is what people give you. Power is what you build yourself. And you cannot build power while you are busy performing for attention. The two are not compatible. Every unit of energy you spend on being seen is a unit of energy you are stealing from the work of becoming. This is the trap. And the first step out of it is understanding exactly how you got in. You did not choose this consciously. Nobody does. You were born into an environment specifically engineered to monetize your need to be seen. Every platform you use, every feed you scroll, every notification that interrupts your day, none of it was designed for your benefit. It was designed to identify your deepest psychological need for connection, belonging, and significance, and then exploit it continuously, profitably, without apology. This is what I call the attention economy trap. The attention economy does not sell you products. It sells you the feeling of matching. It gives you a number, likes, views, followers, shares, and trains you to equate that number with your value. And because the number is always visible, always changing, and always comparable to someone else's number, you are locked in a permanent competition you can never win. Because there is always someone with more attention than you. Always someone louder, more viral, more visible. And the gap between where you are and where they are becomes the evidence your insecure mind uses to confirm what it already feared, that you are not enough. So you perform harder, post more, share more, announce more, try to close the gap with volume, with more content, more visibility, more presence in spaces that were designed to consume you, not develop you. And the gap does not close, because the gap was never real. and the game was never designed for you to win. The attention economy is not your community. It is your competition, and it is competing for the one resource you cannot get back: your time, your energy, your focus, your life. Let me show you what the trap looks like in daily behavior, because it is more subtle than most people realize, and you will recognize yourself in this list before I finish it. The trap looks like spending more time crafting the caption than doing the work the caption is about. It looks like measuring the success of an experience by how well it's photographed. It looks like telling people about your goals before you have done a single thing to achieve them, and feeling the relief of their encouragement as though you have already earned it. It looks like adjusting your opinion mid-sentence because you read the room and realize your actual opinion was not going to land well. It looks like the specific anxiety of posting something and then checking compulsively, repeatedly every few minutes to see how it is being received. It looks like needing to be the most interesting person in the room, the most knowledgeable, the most experienced, the one with the best story, the sharpest take, the most impressive reference. It looks like doing genuinely good work and then feeling strangely hollow about it when nobody noticed. Every single one of these behaviors has the same root: the belief, operating mostly below conscious awareness, that your value is located outside of you, in the reaction, in the number, in the room's response. That belief is the trap, and that belief is a lie. Now let me tell you what power actually looks like, because it is almost the opposite of everything the attention economy has trained you to perform. The most powerful people you will ever encounter are rarely the loudest in the room. They are not the ones with the most polished personal brand or the most carefully curated online presence. They are not the ones talking the most, sharing the most, or making sure everyone knows what they are working on. They are the ones building, quietly, consistently, with a focus so complete that the opinion of the audience becomes genuinely irrelevant. Not as a performance of indifference, but as the natural result of being so consumed by the work that there is no bandwidth left for the performance. They walk into rooms, and the energy shifts, not because they announce themselves, but because something about them communicates that they have been somewhere, done something, built something real. That energy is not manufactured. It cannot be faked. It is the residue of private discipline made visible through presence. That is power, and it is available to you, but only if you stop spending your energy on attention. Here is what I need you to do before this chapter is finished. I want you to audit the last 7 days of your life. Not the highlights, not the wins, the actual texture of your days. How much of what you did was genuine, driven by your values, your vision, your actual desire to build something or become someone? And how much of it was performance, shaped consciously or unconsciously by how it would look, how it would land, how it would be received by an audience, real or imagined? Be honest. This is not about judgment. This is about clarity, because you cannot dismantle a trap you cannot see in full. Most people, when they do this audit honestly, find the ratio deeply uncomfortable. They find that a significant portion of their daily energy, their best thinking, their most creative hours, their most valuable attention, has been flowing toward managing perception rather than building reality. That is the cost of the trap. Not dramatic, not sudden, just a slow, invisible, compounding hemorrhage of potential. Every day you spend performing is a day you did not spend building, and those days do not come back. The good news, and there is good news, is that the moment you see the trap clearly, you have already begun to exit it. Awareness is not the destination, but it is the door, and the door is open. Attention was never the goal. It was always the distraction from the goal. And the goal, the only goal that will ever actually satisfy you, is power. Built quietly, accumulated privately, announced by nothing except the undeniable weight of your results. You now see the trap for what it is, The engineered addiction to being seen that has been quietly consuming the energy you need to build something real. But knowing the trap exists is only the beginning. Because even when you decide to stop chasing attention, there's one thing most people still cannot do. They cannot be quiet. They cannot tolerate the silence that real building requires. They fill every space with noise, with opinions, with updates, with proof that they exist. And that noise is costing them more than they know.
Chapter 2. Silence is not weakness. It is your greatest weapon. Tell me something. When was the last time you were truly silent? Not asleep, not distracted, not scrolling through someone else's life at midnight while your own sits untouched. Genuinely, deliberately, comfortably silent. No input, no output, no performance. Just you, present, unhurried, and completely unbothered by the fact that no one knew what you were doing or thinking or building. If you are struggling to remember, that is the problem. Because somewhere between the culture that rewards visibility and the technology that punishes silence with invisibility, you lost your relationship with one of the most powerful tools a human being has ever had access to. Silence. Not the silence of having nothing to say. Not the silence of being ignored or overlooked or forgotten. The silence of someone who has so much being built beneath the surface that words would only cheapen it. The silence of someone who understands, deeply, unshakably, that what you withhold is often more powerful than what you offer. Silence is not weakness. It is your greatest weapon, and you have been leaving it unused. Let's start by being honest about your current relationship with silence. Most people are terrified of it, not in a way they would admit, not in a way they even fully recognize. But watch what happens the next time a conversation hits a lull. Watch how quickly someone, maybe you, rushes to fill it, with a comment that did not need to be made, with an opinion that was not fully formed, with an update about themselves that the moment did not require. Watch what happens when someone achieves something quietly and does not tell anyone. The discomfort, the itch, the compulsive need to let someone know, not because it serves a purpose, but because an unwitnessed achievement feels somehow incomplete. Watch what happens when someone is criticized or challenged, and they stay silent instead of defending themselves. How uncomfortable that silence makes everyone in the room, including the person being challenged. How much pressure builds in that space. How loudly silence speaks when everyone expected noise. That discomfort is not an accident. You were trained into it. A world built on the attention economy needs you to keep talking, keep posting, keep sharing, keep producing content, because your silence is your competitor's visibility. The algorithm does not reward the person who went quiet to go deep. It punishes them with invisibility and rewards the person who stayed loud with reach. So you learn to stay loud, to fill the silence, to perform continuity even when the most powerful thing you could do was disappear and build. You were trained to fear silence, and that fear has been serving everyone except you. Here is what silence actually does, in 3 domains that matter more than most people realize. The first domain is conversation. There is a principle that the most experienced negotiators, the most respected leaders, and the most influential communicators in the world understand instinctively. The person who speaks least in a room is almost always the person most carefully listened to when they do speak. Think about that. Really sit with it. When someone talks constantly, filling every space, offering opinions on everything, never allowing a moment of quiet, their words become ambient noise. Background. You stop really hearing them because there is simply too much to process and none of it feels precious. But the person who is selective, the person who listens more than they speak, the person who waits, genuinely waits, until they have something worth saying and then says it with economy and precision. That person commands attention without chasing it. Every word they offer carries weight because weight is what happens when words are rationed. In conversation, silence is not the absence of power. It is the accumulation of it. Stop talking so much. Listen more than you speak. Offer less than you know. And watch how the room shifts toward you in a way it never did when you were filling every space with noise. The second domain is conflict. This one is harder. Because conflict is the environment where silence feels most like surrender. When someone challenges you, publicly, privately, directly, or passive-aggressively, every instinct in your body fires toward defense, toward explanation, toward making sure they understand your position, your reasoning, your justification, toward winning the argument in the room. And in that rush to defend, you give them exactly what they were trying to provoke. Reaction, engagement, proof that they got to you. Here is what silence does in conflict that no defense ever can. It refuses to participate in the other person's narrative. It declines the invitation to perform. It communicates, more powerfully than any argument, that you are not threatened, that their challenge did not land the way they hoped, that you are operating from a level of security they cannot access with provocation. Silence in conflict is not concession. It is dominance. The person who can be challenged and stay quiet, who can be criticized and not crumble, who can be provoked and not perform. That person has a psychological advantage that no amount of clever arguing can match. Your silence in conflict tells the room that you cannot be moved by noise. And people who cannot be moved by noise are people who hold power. Stop defending yourself to everyone who challenges you. Not every accusation deserves a response. Not every criticism deserves your energy. Not every provocation deserves your engagement. Some things, most things, are best answered with silence and time. Let the work answer. Let the results respond. Let your continued, unbothered forward motion be the only argument you make. The third domain is achievement. This is where silence builds the kind of power that attention-seeking can never produce. And it is where most people fail most completely. When you're building something, a business, a skill, a body, a financial foundation, a creative work, the compulsive need to tell people about it is one of the greatest threats to its completion. Not because telling people is inherently wrong, but because premature announcement creates premature satisfaction. The social acknowledgement of your intention, the encouragement, the excitement, the validation from people who believe in what you said you're going to do, partially satisfies the psychological reward that actually finishing would provide. Your brain gets a taste of the celebration before the work is done, and that taste reduces the hunger that was driving you forward. This is not a theory. This is documented in social psychology research going back decades. Announced goals are completed at a significantly lower rate than private ones. The announcement becomes the substitute for the action. The performance replaces the production. When you tell everyone what you are building, you reduce the urgency of building it. So stay quiet. Go dark. Disappear into the work with a focus so complete that the people around you notice the absence before they notice the result. Let them wonder. Let them speculate. Let the silence build a curiosity that no amount of strategic posting could manufacture. And then arrive. With results. Without preamble. Without explanation. Without the need for their reaction to confirm what you already know. In achievement, silence is not invisibility. It is strategy. Now let's talk about what strategic silence actually looks like as a daily practice. Because understanding it conceptually is not enough. You need to know what to do. Strategic silence is the deliberate, conscious withholding of information, reaction, and presence in service of a larger goal. It means choosing not to share the thing you're working on until it is finished. Not one update, not one teaser, not one indirect reference designed to make people curious. Finished, done, ready. It means choosing not to defend yourself in real time when you're challenged publicly. Taking the time, hours, days if necessary, to decide whether a response serves your goals or simply satisfies your ego. And having the discipline to stay quiet when the honest answer is ego. It means choosing not to fill every conversation with your own content. Asking questions, listening completely, offering your perspective only when it genuinely adds value, not when it simply confirms that you are present and engaged and worth paying attention to. It means being comfortable, genuinely, increasingly comfortable with the experience of doing good work that no one currently knows about. Building that comfort deliberately, the way you build any other form of strength. Through repetition, through the accumulated evidence that the work does not need an audience to be real. Strategic silence is not passive. It is one of the most active choices you will ever make. Here is your instruction before this chapter closes. Identify one area of your life where you are currently talking more than you are building. One goal you have announced. One achievement you have been subtly broadcasting. One area where the performance has been louder than the production. Make a decision right now. Go silent on it. Not forever. Until it is done. Until the result speaks so clearly that silence was obviously the right strategy all along. Practice tolerating the discomfort of that silence. The itch to update. The urge to share. The anxiety of being unseen while you build. Sit in it. Breathe through it. Recognize it for what it is. Not a signal that you should speak, but evidence that the silence is working. What you do not say is building something that what you do say never could. Silence is not the absence of power. Silence is where power is made. You now understand that silence is not something to be feared or filled. It is the environment where real power is built. But silence alone is not enough. Because even people who have learned to stay quiet still make one critical mistake. They announce before they arrive. They tell the world what they are becoming before they have become it. And that announcement, however subtle, however well-intentioned, is quietly killing their momentum. Chapter 3. Stop announcing. Start arriving. I want you to think about someone you know. Someone who is always almost there. Always working on something big. Always in the middle of a transformation. Always about to launch, about to finish, about to become. They told you about the business 6 months ago. They announced the fitness journey in January. They shared the vision, the plan, the intention, with passion, with detail, with the kind of energy that made you genuinely believe this time was different. And then nothing. The business did not launch. The transformation stalled somewhere around week 3. The vision that was described so vividly over dinner is never mentioned again until a new version of it replaces the old one. And the cycle begins again. New announcement, new energy, new audience reaction that feels just enough like progress to substitute for the real thing. You know someone like this. And if you're being completely honest, in some area of your life, at some point in the recent past, you have been someone like this. We all have. Because the announcement feels so much like the arrival that most people never notice the difference until they look back and realize they have been announcing the same destination for years without ever actually leaving. The announcement is not the arrival. And mistaking one for the other is one of the most expensive habits a person can have. Let's talk about what is actually happening in your brain when you announce a goal. Because this is not a character flaw. This is not laziness. This is not a lack of discipline or commitment or desire. This is biology, and until you understand the mechanism, you cannot dismantle it. When you share a goal with someone and they respond positively, with encouragement, with excitement, with the kind of affirmation that says, yes, I can see you doing that, I believe in you, your brain releases dopamine. The same neurochemical reward that you would receive from actually making progress toward the goal. Your brain, in that moment, does not fully distinguish between the plan and the execution, between the intention and the result, between saying you're going to do something and doing it. It registers the social approval and files it under progress. And because the reward has already been partially collected, because the dopamine has already been released, the urgency that was driving you toward the goal quietly deflates. Not completely, not immediately, but enough. Enough to make the couch feel reasonable. Enough to make tomorrow feel acceptable. Enough to make the gap between announcement and action grow until it becomes the space where the goal quietly dies. This is what psychologists call social reality substitution. The social acknowledgement of an intention becomes a substitute for the behavioral reality of executing it. You told the world you were building something. The world said it believed in you. And some part of your brain said, good enough. It is not good enough. Good enough is the enemy of arrival. An announcement is the door to good enough. Now let's make this concrete. Because abstract psychology does not change behavior. Specific recognition does. Think about the last goal you announced publicly. The last transformation you shared before was real. The last version of your future self you described to someone before you had done the work to become them. How did it feel to tell people? Be honest. It felt good. It felt like momentum. It felt like you were putting something into the universe, making it real by speaking it, creating accountability that would drive you forward. That feeling was real. The interpretation of it was wrong. What you felt was not momentum. It was release. The pressure that had been building behind the goal, the productive tension between where you are and where you want to be, partially escaped through the announcement. And pressure is fuel. When it escapes before the engine is running, you lose the thing that was going to drive you. Announcing your goals does not create accountability. It creates the feeling of accountability without the function of it. Real accountability is internal. It is the private commitment between you and the standard you have set for yourself. It does not require a witness. It does not require an audience. It requires only the daily decision to show up for the work, whether or not anyone knows you are doing it, whether or not anyone would notice if you stopped. That is the accountability that produces results, not the public declaration, the private discipline. Let me introduce you to two kinds of people, and I want you to decide, honestly, without ego, which one you currently are. The first is the announcer. The announcer leads with a vision. They are compelling in conversation, passionate, articulate, full of ideas that genuinely excite the people around them. They have a gift for describing what they're going to build in terms so vivid that it feels already real. But the description is the product. The announcement is the achievement. The reaction of the room is the reward they were actually after, not the result the announcement was supposedly pointing toward. The announcer has a long history of almost launched, almost finished, almost became, a portfolio of beginnings and a conspicuous absence of arrivals. And they have learned, without consciously deciding, to move to a new announcement before the old one's expiration date becomes undeniable. The second is the arriver. The arriver is quiet in the way that people who are genuinely busy tend to be quiet, not mysterious for effect, not deliberately withholding for the sake of intrigue, just absorbed, focused, operating at a depth of engagement with the actual work that leaves very little bandwidth for performing about it. The arriver does not tell you what they are building. They show you what they built. They do not describe the transformation they are undertaking. They show up one day visibly different, and when you ask what changed, the answer is quiet, specific, and entirely devoid of drama. They do not announce the business. They send you the link when it is live. They do not post about the process. They share the result. And when the result lands, when the arrival happens, it carries a weight that no announcement ever could. Because it is real, undeniable, unedited, not a vision of what might be, but evidence of what is. Arrival energy is the most magnetic force in any room, and it can only be generated by people who were too busy building to announce they were building. Here is where this gets harder, because some of you are going to push back on what I am saying. You're going to tell me that sharing your journey is authentic, that vulnerability is powerful, that letting people see the process is how you build community and connection and trust. And you're not entirely wrong. There's a version of sharing the process that is genuine, that serves a real purpose, that creates real connection without substituting for real progress. But that is not what most people are doing. And you know the difference if you are honest enough to look at it directly. Ask yourself this question, and do not let yourself off the hook with a comfortable answer. When I share what I'm working on, who is it actually for? Is it to serve the people you are sharing it with? To genuinely add value to their lives, their thinking, their own journey? To create something that stands independently of your need to be seen? Or is it to feel seen? To collect the encouragement? To manage the anxiety of building in private by importing some external validation to confirm that the work is real and that you are capable and that the destination is worth the journey? Be honest. The honest answer is the useful one. If the sharing is for them, it has a place. If the sharing is for you, it is costing you the arrival. So what do you actually do differently starting today? You go dark on your most important goal. Not forever. Not as a permanent philosophy of secrecy. Until it is done, you stop giving people the preview. You stop sharing the mood board and the vision board and the plan and the timeline and the update and the almost there and the so close now. You do the work in private with a consistency so complete and a focus so total that the goal stops feeling like something you're trying to achieve and starts feeling like something that is simply, inevitably happening. And then you arrive without preamble, without the long story of how hard it was and how much you sacrificed and how many times you almost quit. You arrive with the result, clean, undeniable, announced by nothing except its own existence. That arrival will do more for your reputation, your confidence, and your actual power than 1,000 announcements ever could. Because the world does not remember what you said you were going to do. The world responds to what you did. Stop being a person of announcements. Become a person of arrivals. The gap between those two identities is not talent. It is not resources. It is not circumstances or timing or luck. It is the decision, made privately, on or daily, to let the work speak instead of speaking for the work. Stop announcing. Start arriving. And let the silence between now and the result be the most powerful statement you have ever made. You now understand the hidden cost of announcing before you have arrived, how the dopamine of declaration has been stealing the fuel from your execution, and how the most powerful arrivals are always the ones nobody saw coming. But going quiet and building in private will only take you so far if the deeper issue remains unaddressed. Because underneath the announcing, underneath the performing, underneath every behavior. Chapter 4. The validation addiction is keeping you small. I want you to sit with something uncomfortable for a moment. Think about the last significant decision you made. Not a small one, a real one. A decision about your direction, your work, your relationships, your life. Now answer this honestly. Did you make that decision because you believed in it? Because it aligned with your values, your vision, your deepest understanding of who you are and what you are building? Or did you make it, at least partly, because you needed someone to tell you it was the right call? Because you polled the room, gathered opinions, collected perspectives until the weight of other people's approval finally gave you permission to move? Be honest. The honest answer is the only one worth having. Because most people, if they look clearly without the comfortable story they tell themselves about their own autonomy, most people will find that a significant portion of their most important decisions were not really made by them at all. They were made by the accumulated approval of an audience. And that audience, well-meaning, caring, sometimes brilliant, does not have to live with the consequences. You do. You have been outsourcing the most important decisions of your life to people who do not have to live them. And you have called it wisdom. It is not wisdom. It is addiction. Let's name the addiction directly. Validation addiction is the condition of requiring consistent external confirmation of your worth, your decisions, your direction, your identity, in order to function with confidence, in order to move forward, in order to feel that what you are doing is real and right and worth continuing. It is not dramatic. It does not look like weakness from the outside. It often looks like conscientiousness, like humility, like the admirable quality of someone who values other people's perspectives and does not act unilaterally. But there's a line between genuine openness to input and the compulsive inability to move without approval. And most people cross that line so long ago they cannot remember which side they started on. Here is how you know you have crossed it. You know, when the thought of making a major decision without consulting anyone produces genuine anxiety. Not the healthy uncertainty of a difficult choice, but the specific dread of having to trust yourself without a witness. You know when you share an idea, not to refine it, but to feel the warmth of someone believing in it. When the feedback you are seeking is not critique, is confirmation. You know when someone pushes back on your position and you feel the ground shift beneath you. Not because their argument was compelling, but because their disapproval felt unbearable. And making it stop, by agreeing, by softening, by abandoning the position that was actually yours, felt like the only available relief. You know when you have done genuinely good work and it felt hollow, empty, strangely unsatisfying, until someone told you it was good. And then, suddenly, immediately, it became real. If your achievement requires an audience to feel complete, you do not own your achievement. The audience does. And that means they can take it back. They can withdraw the confirmation. They can go silent, move on, shift their attention, and suddenly the achievement that felt solid dissolve back into uncertainty. That is not a foundation. That is quicksand. And you have been building your life on it. Let me show you the 3 faces of validation addiction, because it does not always look the same, and you need to recognize which version is yours. The first face is the approval seeker. The approval seeker cannot make a decision without polling the room. Every significant choice is preceded by a consultation process that is less about gathering useful information and more about collecting enough yes to feel safe moving forward. They ask for opinions they do not really want. They present options they have already decided between. They frame questions in ways that make their preferred answer obvious, because what they are actually seeking is not perspective. It is permission. The approval seeker is not weak. They are often incredibly capable, but their capability has a ceiling, the height of the tallest person whose approval they need, because they will never build anything bigger than what the people they depend on can endorse. You cannot build a life that exceeds your audience's imagination if you need your audience's approval to build it. The approval seeker's work is to make one significant decision this week, a real one, not a trivial one, without asking anyone, without consulting, without collecting opinions, to trust the intelligence they have accumulated, the values they have built, the vision they have developed, and move from that place alone. It will feel terrifying. Do it anyway. The terror is the addiction breaking. The second face is the conflict avoider. The conflict avoider has validation addiction with a specific trigger, disagreement. They function reasonably well when the room is agreeable. When people reflect their choices back with warmth and enthusiasm, they can move with something that resembles confidence. But the moment someone pushes back, the moment a voice in a room says, "I don't think that's right," or "Have you considered the other side?" or simply communicates displeasure through tone or silence or withdrawal, the conflict avoider collapses. Not loudly, quietly. They soften their position. They add qualifications that were not there before. They discover nuance in their previously firm stance. They perform open-mindedness while actually just fleeing from the discomfort of being disagreed with. And over time, through hundreds of these small collapses, they lose track of what they actually think. Because their position has been so consistently shaped by the reaction of the room that the original signal of their own perspective has become impossible to find beneath all the accommodation. The conflict avoider does not know what they believe. They know what the room will tolerate. The work for the conflict avoider is to hold a position once deliberately in a real conversation, past the point where someone pushes back. Not aggressively, not rigidly, but firmly. To feel the discomfort of someone's disapproval and stay in the room with it. To let the disagreement exist without rushing to resolve it through capitulation. That discomfort is not a signal that you are wrong. It is a signal that you are growing. The third face is the achievement performer. This is the most subtle and the most common. The achievement performer does the work. They're not lazy. They are not avoidant. They build real things, develop real skills, produce real results. But the results do not feel real until they are witnessed. The achievement performer finishes the project and immediately needs to share it. Not because sharing serves a strategic purpose, but because an unwitnessed achievement feels incomplete. Like a performance given to an empty theater. Technically it happened, but did it count? They measure the quality of their work not by their own assessment, their own sense of whether it achieved what it was meant to achieve, but by the reaction it generates. A piece of work that they privately know is excellent feels mediocre if the response is muted. A piece of work they privately had doubts about feels validated if the response is enthusiastic. They have handed the authority of judgment to an audience that does not have their expertise, their context, or their standards. The achievement performer has confused reception with quality, and that confusion is a ceiling on everything they will ever build. Now let's talk about what exists on the other side of this addiction, because I'm not asking you to become cold, isolated, indifferent to feedback or connection or the genuine value of other people's perspectives. I am asking you to develop what I call internal referencing. Internal referencing is the practice of evaluating your decisions, your progress, and your worth against your own standards, your values, your vision, your honest self-assessment, rather than against the reaction of an audience. It does not mean you never seek input. It means you seek input as information, data to be weighed and integrated, rather than as permission to proceed or confirmation that you exist. It means you develop the capacity to look at your own work and know, from the inside, without external confirmation, whether it is good, whether it is true, whether it is aligned with what you're trying to build and who you're trying to become. That capacity is not arrogance. Arrogance is the refusal to consider that you might be wrong. Internal referencing is the willingness to be the primary authority on your own life, while remaining genuinely open to perspectives that can sharpen your thinking. The difference is who holds the final vote. In a life built on validation addiction, the audience holds the final vote. In a life built on internal referencing, you do. Here is your practice before this chapter ends. Before you make any significant decision this week, before you share any significant work, before you take any significant action, stop and ask yourself one question. Am I doing this because I believe in it? Or because I need someone to approve of it? Not as a judgment, as a diagnostic, as the question that reveals with uncomfortable precision whether you are operating from power or from addiction in this particular moment. You will not always like the answer. Sometimes the honest answer will be that you are about to do something entirely for the approval, that the belief is thin and the need for validation is thick. When that is the answer, pause. Do not perform. Do not announce. Do not seek the approval that your system is craving. Go back to the work. Go back to the values. Go back to the private, quiet, unwitnessed place where real decisions are made and real power is built. And make the choice from there. Every time you choose your own judgment over your audience's approval, you take back a piece of your power. And power, reclaimed piece by piece, compounds into a life that no amount of external validation could ever produce. The addiction kept you small. The recovery builds you into someone the addiction could never have imagined. You now understand the root, the validation addiction that has been capping your potential, shaping your decisions, and keeping you dependent on an audience for the confidence that was always supposed to come from within. You have a diagnostic question. You have the three faces. You have the practice of internal referencing. But all of this, the silence, the discipline of non-announcement, the recovery from validation addiction, only produces its full result when it is sustained, when it becomes not a strategy you apply in difficult moments, but a daily way of living.